Building a site network requires infrastructure, but when you attempt to provision it, you're immediately dropped into a maze of technical options and pricing structures. You end up asking providers for a per IP rate without actually knowing how many distinct IP addresses you need to put in your cart. You are forced to guess your budget completely blind. To figure out that volume, operators frequently fall into a networking trap. They look at a standard /24 subnet and calculate exactly how many addresses fit inside it. Buying a full /24 block gives you 254 addresses, but the first 3 octets are completely identical. You've purchased volume, not diversity. Sharing this neighborhood makes them a single glowing target. Search engines clearly see these sites are connected. Paying for subnet capacity guarantees wasted capital if your goal is separating your sites. To achieve actual separation, you have to acquire distinct Class C ranges. So how many distinct ranges do you actually need? The rule is strictly mechanical. You only pay for diversity if your domains interact. Imagine you own a portfolio of 40 websites, but they cover completely different topics and never link to one another. Because those isolated sites aren't passing any link equity, separate IPs buy you absolutely nothing. You can safely run all 40 on a single dedicated IP and keep infrastructure costs low. But if your strategy relies on those properties pointing to one another, to pass link signals, the math changes entirely. This flowchart illustrates the interlinking test. For sites that connect, you must purchase exactly one diverse Class C IP for every interlinking domain. This ensures the signals remain structurally separate. Taking 3 minutes to map out which of your domains actually link to each other removes all the guesswork. In practice, operators routinely cut their proposed infrastructure orders in half once they realize most of their sites operate independently. The interlinking test applies differently depending on the type of network you run. Let's look at the independent multi-site owner building a topical authority network. For these operators, that interlinking map strictly dictates the budget. They only pay for distinct ranges for the specific sites actively passing equity. If you run an SEO agency managing external client portfolios, that logic completely reverses. Client sites usually don't link to each other. Yet, an agency must ignore the interlinking test and size its IP count based entirely on total client headcount. This diagram shows the primary threat. If 2 clients share an IP and one gets penalized, that red flag spreads. A structural wall drops down when using distinct ranges, isolating the healthy client. At that point, client isolation becomes a contractual liability for agency owners. Agencies inevitably carry a higher baseline infrastructure cost than multi-site owners. That premium buys the cross-client protection and contractual security required for professional management. The final scenario involves the international operator scaling properties into parallel US and European markets. Here, the math requires a multiplier. You must take your target domains and multiply them by your target regions to find the true IP requirement. This chart highlights a hard technical ceiling for non-adjacent ranges. Providers max out at roughly 800 distinct US ranges and 1,300 globally. To maintain geographic relevance, an operator targeting multiple continents must draw from these separate regional registries. The European address space is incredibly constrained. Genuinely distinct EU ranges are far scarcer than their US equivalents. If you are planning an international expansion, verify exact IP range availability with your host before you commit to a business roadmap. Otherwise, you risk hitting a hard technical wall. Once you know your number, you might feel the urge to over-provision and buy large IP blocks up front to future-proof a growing network. IP ranges are allocated per order. They are not held in a permanent reserve for you. Pre-buying capacity guarantees you are paying for unused assets. You create an immediate monthly cash burn for domains that do not exist yet, generating absolutely zero current SEO benefit for your live sites. The market data proves this is unnecessary. Roughly 40% of successful operators routinely upgrade their capacity later. It is standard practice. Sizing exclusively for today's active map while monitoring your network for future upgrades is the most mathematically efficient strategy. This matrix maps out where your budget actually lands. Across all orders, the median purchase is exactly 21 diverse Class C IPs. If your interlinking test yields 5 to 20 IPs, you map perfectly into standard shared SEO hosting tiers. As your network surpasses roughly 50 IPs, the primary constraint shifts from IP cost to the raw server resources required. Networks crossing that threshold must graduate to an SEO VPS to secure root access and resource allocation. Identify your operator profile. Run the interlinking test to find your exact number. Match it to the correct tier and launch your infrastructure without overspending.